For the fourth time in the last 5 years, the Waynesburg University women's cross-country team has had a representative at the national meet. Aubrey Wingert and Dylan, she finished in the top half of the field, 134th out of 280 runners.
She had a good weekend, and so did the women's basketball team as well as the wrestling team, who both picked up victories over the weekend. We'll dive into that, and we'll have an interview with men's basketball player Isaiah Alonzo coming up today. I'm Dylan Cleland.
And I'm Jack Hillgrove. And it's time for Jacket Sports Weekly. The cross-country season at Waynesburg University is officially complete, and icing was put on the cake. Aubrey Wingert was the fourth runner in the last 5 years for Waynesburg University at the national meet, and she did pretty well. Dylan Cleland alongside Jack Hillgrove. Dylan, 134th out of 280 runners in the top half of the nation in Division III is pretty good if you ask me.
Yeah, and she's joining the names in Waynesburg history like Katie and Emily Latimer, the twins from 2015 who went to nationals, Julie Gerber of 2016. And so you take a look at those names, and just her name to be in with those alone is an accomplishment in and of itself. Taking a look at the race itself, it was rainy, muddy conditions throughout the day in Louisville, Kentucky, where the national championships were held. And so with that into consideration, her only being a sophomore as well, not a bad performance overall, as you said, finishing in that top half of the running field.
Yeah, there was a lot of congestion, too, throughout the meet. You look at pictures online and you see 280 runners, and they were all sort of congested together. Parley Hannon, sophomore from Ithaca College, was the winner of the meet, 20 minutes and 53 seconds. And as, Dylan Cleland mentioned, the fourth runner in the last 5 years for the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets to run in the cross-country meet at the Nationals, and she did pretty well, 134th place. It was icing on the cake for her season. 5 PAC Runner of the Week awards this season, PAC Runner of the Year, and earning all region laurels after placing 10th at Mid-East Regional. So a good season for Aubrey Wingert, and a really good season for the women overall, and a building block coming into next season.
Well, absolutely, and she's only a sophomore. You have to keep that in mind. She's going to be able to come back and have a chance. We've heard Coach Chris Hardy talk about her possibly even achieving All-American status by the time she graduates here from Waynesburg. So we'll see moving forward, but a very solid women's cross-country season nonetheless.
Yeah, and the dynasty continues for the women's cross-country team. We'll see how they do in the indoor season coming up in the winter, and then, of course, in the spring with track. Basketball, a rough start for the basketball team thus far this season. Dylan, we'll start with the men, who are 0-4 to start the season, and a tough loss to Kenyon College over the weekend.
Yeah, a very tough loss for the team, who is now 0-4 under first-year head coach Tim Fusina. Still getting things figured out, still trying to deal with some moving parts as well. An 80-61 loss to Kenyon College on Saturday. They were losing 42-28 at halftime, and then they scored 33 points in the second half, but still just not enough to come back against the Kenyon team that historically isn't that good. They had Waynesburg's number last year when they played and had it again this past Saturday. 18 turnovers for Waynesburg. That number has to go down. But one positive to take away, both the men's, and we'll talk about the women in a little bit, both shooting well from the free throw line, 76% at the charity stripe for the men on Saturday.
Yeah, and to highlight one in particular, Isaiah Alonzo, who will sit down with Nolan Porterfield later on in the show, who is 6'10", and if you know basketball, big men are notorious, it seems like a stereotype almost, that they aren't good at shooting free throws. Not only did Isaiah Alonzo have 23 on Saturday against Kenyon, but he went 10 for 10 from the charity stripe, which is something that I think that this Waynesburg University basketball team has lacked in the last couple of seasons, a capable big man who can do it down low and do it from the perimeter. He has a great outside game as well. 5 rebounds to boot, was 6 for 8 from the field goal range, or from the floor, I should say, was Isaiah Alonzo. He looks to be a bright spot for this Waynesburg basketball team, but a lot of moving parts, as Dylan mentioned. Mark Christner, the former head coach who's now at his alma mater in Calvin in Michigan, ran a lot of high ball screen pick and roll role scenarios in his offense. And talking with the senior Brennan Smith, Tim Fusina's offense is a lot different because there's one guy with the ball and everybody else is moving. It's more of a 5-man offense than it is just a pick and roll game, which Matt Popek was used to running the balls as the point guard, but something, as he comes back with a nagging injury that he'll have to deal with as well. And it's a lot of moving parts for this offense, Dylan, and I think with the rest of the non-conference slate coming up, I think that'll give them a chance to figure out what they do offensively, and then it'll roll into PAC play because I have a hard time believing that a lot of teams in the President's Athletic Conference will have a hard time defending Isaiah Alonzo.
Yeah, I think so too. His size, as you mentioned, is something that Waynesburg's going to have to use to its advantage. Real quick, though, before we switch over to the women's side of things, let's point out Ryan Philberg and Ethan Travis, two freshmen. They've been stepping up, getting some minutes. As we said, Popek dealing with that injury. It's not a bad thing to let some of these younger guys get in there and get some game action. So we'll see where things move. I think the Jackets will be okay as we get closer to conference play, though.
Yeah, it's a nice balance between the two freshmen, Felberg and Travis. Travis, from 6'6", provides some depth at forward, and Felberg, an outside game as well, an excellent three-point shooter. We switch to the other basketball team, the women, who, unlike the men, have a win on the 2019-2020 season. A tremendous effort beating Houghton on Friday, 70-61.
Yeah, the team actually started out kind of slow, 12-7 trailing in that first quarter. A 14-11 deficit heading into the second frame. But then after that, Waynesburg kind of took over the game, and they didn't really look back. They were able to hold on for the 70-61 victory, that first win of the season. They were out-rebounded 40-38, but that's not a huge deal. They were able to make up for it in some other aspects. Defense and their performance at the free throw line being one of them, 78.6% at the free throw line. And that's one thing that a Sam Jones coach team always does well. They hit those free throws. And that's a big part. That's a lot of free points that you're getting when you're able to have success there. Sophomore Brooke Fuller with 15 points, 9 rebounds, just that one rebound shy of a double-double. She played 31 minutes and went 3 for 3 at the free throw line. Andrea Orlowski Jr., second leading scorer with 14 points. Yeah, it's good to see that Brooke Fuller starting to come into her own as the true post player for this women's basketball team. And I think the work with Matt Pioch, who has been working with her as an assistant coach, at her post game, has really started to pay off. 9 rebounds over top of a player for Houghton. I do believe that was 6'3" for Houghton, and Brooke Fuller was able to outplay her and get those 9 rebounds and score 15 points as well. And as you mentioned, Dylan, a Sam Jones team that is notorious for shooting well at the free throw line. Aaron Joyce comes back into the fold for her senior campaign. Did not score from the floor, but had 8 points, all of which coming from the charity stripe. One other thing, looking at this Waynesburg women's team, the defense. They made a switch going into Friday's game, switched to the zone to try and keep up with some of those quicker, faster athletes of Houghton, and it worked well. Fuller said afterwards she thinks it's going to help them moving forward down the stretch, and we'll see as they get closer to PAC play if that's the case. Yeah, Sam Jones channeling his inner Jim Boeheim. We'll see how the zone affects the Waynesburg women's basketball team moving forward. The wrestling team, a good weekend at the John Carroll Duels, 2-1, and a lot of highlights, and it starts with the individual play. Rocky McGeary, a freshman who we've talked about on this show before, Dylan, stood out, and a lot of other players, a lot of other wrestlers, I should say, standing out for the Waynesburg wrestling team. Yeah, Zach Mackel and Rocky McGeary both having big days on Sunday to contribute to some of the team's success. We'll take a look at that. They went 2-1 as a team in the duels, improving to 3-3 overall on the season, defeating Pitt Bradford 36-19 and Penn State Barron 44-7. However, one asterisk that I want to put by that is that those two teams are combined 0-14 on the 2019 season now. So that competition not as strong. Now they did lose to John Carroll as well, 25-14. John Carroll now 7-2 on the season. That's a stronger opponent. But the Jackets went down 25-0 in that match due to forfeits and some losses in bouts. And they were able to fight back into it. Dylan Charlton had a 9-7 victory at the 185 or 184 weight class. A forfeit, and then Rocky McGeary, again, he had 2 technical fall wins on Sunday. And so, honestly, I think this team's okay. We were a little bit concerned about them at first, but they're showing some big steps of guys that are able to step into some of those shoes that need to be filled so far this season. Yeah, and John Carroll is a very, very good wrestling team, and as you mentioned, 7-2 on the season, and they have been a strong program for a very long time. But
Rocky McGeary and some other young freshmen as well. I believe Jace Guy from Bloomington, Maryland, he had a 15-0 technical fall at 157 pounds in the win against Penn State Barron. And while those teams aren't as strong, it's good to see your youth and your freshmen sort of propel themselves into a position where when PAC play rolls along and the long stretch of the wrestling season rolls along, that they'll be able to contribute. And I think Coach Ron Headley's got to be comfortable with the way that his freshmen performed. And Rocky McGeary at 285 pounds, I don't want to say it's not like they're skipping a beat at the heavyweight class because of Jake Evans and how dominant he was, but there's a huge hole to be filled there, and I think Rocky McGeary is going to do a very solid job, not only this season, but in his remaining years at Waynesburg University, becoming that heavyweight contender and that heavyweight mainstay for the Jackets.
Yeah, I think Ron Headley has found himself an acceptable heavyweight.
Yeah.
I think that's the word to use, and McGeary's come in and done a nice job with that. A couple other things real quick to point out. Both those in the Pitt Bradford match and Penn State Barron match, a lot of forfeits that contributed to victories. Got to keep that in mind, but nonetheless, a win is a win, and Waynesburg picked up 2 of them on Saturday.
Yeah, and a lot of time to grow. December 6th will be the next time that the Waynesburg Wrestlers are in action at the Messiah Petros Invitational. When we come back on Jacket Sports Weekly, it's time for our analyst segments. We'll break down the basketball teams, the women with Jake Nicholas, and the men with Matt Mansfield.
The men's basketball team has a couple of games left before they dive into President's Athletic Conference play, and to break down what they need to improve upon, Jacob Nicholas is here to do just that. Jake, out of these 4 losses, what can you take away as a positive, and then something that definitely needs to be worked on before PAC play?
Well, I think this team does have a lot of solid talent on the team. They've got guys like Brennan Smith, Matt Popek, a newcomer this year, and Isaiah Alonzo, guys who can contribute on the court. But you haven't really seen them meld together so far this season. 0-4, as you said. So I think the bright spot is that there is talent on the floor. It's just making it work together. And I think new head coach this season, Tim Fusina, really trying to figure that out so far. Haven't really been scoring well on offense, haven't been scoring up to their potential on offense, and defensively not containing other teams on the perimeter or inside as well. So really trying to figure out just how to work together as a unit under the new coaching system.
Fusina talked about in preseason that when he was scouting out Waynesburg and how they did before he took the job was that one of the things that they needed to focus on was defense and containing teams defensively. Do you see as the non-conference slate continues to roll that they'll continue to get better defensively?
I think that's something that is up to the coaching staff. That's something that when you bring in a new coaching staff and you have a team that you see potential in, you expect the coaching staff to develop that talent. And clearly, as you said, if Fusina saw a problem there, I think that's something him as well as the assistant coaches need to help improve within the players that they have on the team. And something that you can only do so much with this season with the players you have, but looking forward, something that he can look to do with new players that he wants to bring in if he wants to develop that defensive aspect of the game for the team. But I do think that that is something, if he sees that as a problem, that's something that they will continue to improve on before conference games start.
Do you think once this team gets its first win, that'll take that pressure off of the coaching staff and the players themselves of, okay, we got one under our belts now? And if so, how soon do you see that happening?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that'll contribute, because once you get that win, guys start to figure out, okay, this is what's working for us. This is what we can try to look to do more. Or, as they're losing, they can still learn from that as well, figure out, all right, this is what we should stay away from doing. So once they get that win, it will take the pressure off. I do think that their next couple of games will be some tough games against Oberlin College and Otterbein University. So I think it might be a couple games, but if they can pull one out against one of these two teams, which are both very good teams, that would definitely be a big confidence boost for them.
All right, Jacob, thank you very much. We'll see how things go for the men's team against Otterbein and Oberlin coming up. Switch gears now, talk about the women's team and kind of break down their first win of the season and what they have to look forward to. We bring in Matt Mansfield for that.
Hi, guys. Well, finally they got the first win of the season. I think it's always relieving for any team early in the season to kind of bring home that first win. A rough start to the season. The 70-61 win, that was big, a big win. They did lose earlier in the week, 96-79 to Case Western. And the thing that Waynesburg's team needs to improve upon this season, if they're going to go anywhere throughout the PAC, is their defense. They're allowing about 81 points per game. They can score with the best of them. Waynesburg's scoring about 72 points per game, but the way they're letting other teams score, it's just atrocious. And what they're going to need to do to win games is start to lock it down a little bit more on defense if they're going to have any chance of competing whenever it comes to conference play.
We talked about earlier in the show how Sam Jones in the Houghton win switched to a zone defense. Do you think that's something that Waynesburg will look to do more often, maybe come out in a zone, switch to it at a different time in the each game, and how do you think that'll help Waynesburg's women's defensive efforts?
Well, I think that's huge for them to get the confidence from switching to the zone. That might have given them a little bit of a push to be like, all right, something different. It was a different look for Houghton as well. So it was one of those things they hadn't seen that defense. If they watched a little bit of tape, they hadn't seen that before. So it was fresh. It was new. It was a new look. And I think it might work early in the season. But what it's going to come down to is in basketball, it's always the defensive effort. A lot of the time, the hardest part of basketball is defense because it's one of the things you have to really apply yourself to. So it's one of those things they just have to commit to whatever system they're going to play defensively. Whether that be a zone or a man, it's going to have to come down to the commitment of the players on the court to follow through on every defensive play.
How important do you think Erin Joyce's contributions, now she missed the first couple of games and now she's back as a senior to contribute to a team that's really inspired by youth?
As you said, this team is very young. You've got Brooke Fuller thus far has been the best player on this team, and I don't think that's really up for debate right now. She's been doing an awesome job, but she's only a sophomore. So whenever you have your best player so young, it's one of those things that the capabilities of Brooke Fuller can only take you so far, especially as a sophomore. That's a lot of pressure. So Erin Joyce, being a senior, she needs to really step up on both sides of the ball, and her specialty has always been three-point shooting. She didn't have it last year. The year before that, she was really good. She had about 33% clip is what she was hitting threes at. So she needs to kind of bring that three-point specialist back and start playing from three-point range and help the team out on that end of the ball, and I think it's going to be huge for them as a whole.
Well, thank you very much, Matt, for your analysis, and when we come back, we'll have more. Tanner Saprowski will talk about the wrestling team and what they can do moving forward to continue to get better. All that next on JSW. The wrestling team is one of the more successful programs here at Waynesburg in terms of athletics, and they had another good weekend this past, going 2-1 at the John Carroll Duels. And Tanner Saprowski is in to talk about that and what they will have to do moving forward.
Yeah, so they had 2-1 at the John Carroll Duels over the weekend. They beat Pitt Bradford 36-19 and Penn State Barron 44-7. Now both of those teams are a combined 0-14 record, but it's good to see Waynesburg kind of dominate from the start to the finish in those matches. Pitt Bradford, not so much, only 36-19, but the Penn State Barron match, 44-7. Junior Dylan Charlton had the fastest pin in 34 seconds, so he's kind of stepping up without Jacob Evans and Ken Burrs being on the team. So he's kind of stepping up as one of the more prominent wrestlers. He went 2 for 1 overall during the weekend. As you guys mentioned before, freshman Rocky McGeary, he was the last win in that Penn State Barron game that kind of put the exclamation mark on the match. He won with a fall in 5 minutes and 53 seconds. And then Waynesburg went and matched up against John Carroll, who one of the better D3 wrestling schools in the country. They came in 7-2 overall. John Carroll was able to beat Waynesburg 25-14. It was a bad start for Waynesburg. They went down 25-0 and ended up losing 25-14. But the one positive thing that we can take out of it is 5 out of the first 7 bouts were decided by 5 points or less. So Waynesburg, they lost. They were down 25-0, but they didn't get completely blown out. So there was still a good bit of hope there. They finished strong, though. They won the last 3 matches. Charlton won 9-7. Adam Rigney won by forfeit, and Rocky McGeary won 18-3 by technical foul. So they're still, I think 2-1 over the weekend is a good start for them. As we're still in the early part of the season.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, not a whole lot of, but with the exception of John Carroll, but in Pitt Bradford and Penn State Barron, not formidable opponents, but there were a ton of guys that were worth noting and did some good things this weekend, or this past weekend, I should say. How important is that moving forward, that even though the opponents aren't strong, that there are guys that can step up and get the job done?
Yeah, looking from the older guys to the younger guys, senior Adam Rigney, he went 3-0 this weekend, so that's a good start for him being one of those senior leaders on this team. And then the freshman did a great job as well. Jace Guy from Maryland, he went 2 and 1, so that was a good outing for him. Rocky McGeary, he's been great all season so far. He went 2-0. So whether it's from the bottom to the top, it's a good thing that those wrestlers are contributing, and they're starting to build a pretty good team still early on in the season.
Well, thank you, Tanner. That wraps up our analysis for today, but don't go anywhere. Nolan Porterfield sits down with men's basketball player Isaiah Alonzo next on Jacket Sports Weekly.
It's a Saturday night. You know what that means. Time to party. Sam is having a good time, watching sports, drinking beer, playing Pong. Not a care in the world for Sam. Nobody at the party stopped Sam. They let him walk out the door with his keys, even though he was stumbling, having a hard time to stand up. What happened less than 10 minutes later would change Sam's life forever.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. I am Nolan Porterfield, and sitting alongside me is Waynesburg University basketball player Isaiah Alonzo. Isaiah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, how are you?
Doing all right, man. Good. So I want to check real quick. You are from Chandler, Arizona, which is in like the southeastern region of Phoenix, which is about, I looked up on maps on my phone. It's like 1,800 miles from Waynesburg.
Yeah.
You drive or fly here?
Fly.
Fly?
Yeah.
Like, how do you bring all your stuff with you?
I just took 2 giant duffel bags and then mailed like my bedding and some of my shoes and stuff. But I just took a lot of my stuff in duffel bags and stuff like that.
Oh, good deal. All right. Well, you transferred from, I hope I can say this right, Tohono O'odham Community College?
Tohono O'odham.
Tohono O'odham. Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. What made you want to transfer from there?
I liked Coach Fusina and Coach Ul a lot. We've had a long relationship for about 2.5 years now. And they were recruiting me out of high school. It just didn't work at that time. And I felt like it was a great opportunity to go where they were at, and I feel like they were the 2 best coaches to help me raise my game to the next level.
Would you say that's kind of what helped influence your decision to come to Waynesburg?
Yeah, for sure, because I was committed to their old school where they were coaching at before, and they were like, we were going to transfer up here, and hopefully you could come along with us, and that's how it happened.
So how's the adjustment been so far for you?
It's been great. All my teammates have been really supportive. If there's anything I need, they're like, hey, Isaiah, if there's anything you need, take you anywhere, yada, yada. My coaches have been very supportive, take me to the airport and stuff if I need to go home or something like that. But yeah, just the campus has been great. The student body here is really opening and welcoming, so I'm doing great here.
That's great, man. We're glad to hear that. So, looking back on Saturday, you guys fell 81-60 to Kenyon. You, however, led the charge offensively for Waynesburg, scoring 23 of their points.
Yes, sir.
What was the offense doing to help you get the buckets you needed?
Well, I feel like we were setting a lot better screens this time. Our offensive pace was a lot better. We were, in the last few games on film, we were standing around a lot more. But this last game, we were really setting good screens, getting good back screens, and a lot of my points just came within the offense. My teammates finding me in spots I was able to score. So yeah. Good
deal. So the team is currently 0-4 on the season. What do you think the Jackets need to do differently to start putting some wins together here?
One is bring up our defensive pressure. Our Coach Fusina has really been on us about being faster or being better on defense, being up in the ball more. Ball pressure, being in our gaps, being where we're supposed to be, talking more, just becoming more as a unit. That's more of our focus is on the defensive end for sure. And offensively, we just need to keep setting our screens, moving without the ball, and finding our teammates open for open looks. I think if we do that, we'll be all right.
All right, so you have a game tomorrow night against Otterbein. What's the game plan for the Jackets heading into that matchup?
Defend. We got to defend. That's one way it's gonna we're gonna get a win is if we defend, move the ball on offense, find each other where we'll be able to score, and I think we'll be all right.
So one thing that you have in common with some of your new teammates here at Waynesburg is that you're under a new head coach, obviously, in Tim Fusina. How have you adjusted to his style and the tactics that he's implemented on that Jacket basketball team?
It's a good style. He really doesn't. He doesn't really let you slack. He expects 100% out of you all the time because he knows our potential and he knows how good of a basketball team we can be. Now we're just trying to follow in his lead, and if we just do what he says, we'll be all right. We just need to keep practicing and keep working hard towards that.
Last question before we go, just moving away from basketball now, just as a student, talk about what you're majoring in and what your plans are for the future.
I major in business management. Right now I'm trying to take basketball as far as possible because I feel like I have the size, and I just need to keep working on my game to maybe play at the next level. If not, I don't know, just use my business degree and get a good job and figure it out then.
All right, Isaiah. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming in for us. Good luck tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
When we come back, Jack and Dylan will give us their top 5 athletes of the week. Keep it right here on Jacket Sports Weekly.
Back here on Jacket Sports Weekly, Jack Hillgrove alongside Dylan Cleland. It's time for our top 5 athletes of the week. Dylan, how about you go first?
Okay, I will do that. Aubrey Wingart's number 5. She's a sophomore. She finished off her sophomore season at the NCAA Division III Nationals. Despite not running maybe as well as she wanted to due to some of those conditions, still, you have to commend her for her work throughout the season. Number 4, senior Zach Mackel from the wrestling team. He was one of the guys that we thought would need to step up for Waynesburg wrestling this year. He has. He contributed towards the 2 wins on Sunday, and he needs to just continue that leadership moving forward. Number 3, our interview today, sophomore Isaiah Alonzo. He had a breakout game for the Waynesburg men's basketball team. 23 points, 10 for 10 at the line. Can't ask for much more than that. As the team still searches for its first win, however, he'll have to continue to play strong. Number 2, Brooke Fuller, the sophomore. She was just 1 rebound shy of a double-double, tallying 15 points and 9 boards in the Lady Jays' first win of 2019. And number 1, freshman Rocky McGeary. 2 more wins on the mat this weekend at the heavyweight wrestling position, and he's been a solid fit for that spot so far for Waynesburg.
Yeah, we have a lot of similar names, Dylan, but in just some different spots. Number 5, I had Zach Mackel, as you mentioned, 2-1 on the day at John Carroll, and 2 falls victories as well. Rocky McGeary, I have him at number 4, 2 technical fall wins for him as well, a name that we're really excited about at Jacket Sports Weekly as far as Waynesburg wrestlers go. Number 3, Brooke Fuller, I'm excited to see where she will end up this season and see if she can propel her game a little bit more, 15-9 against Taunton in the victory. Number 2, the 4th national representative in 5 seasons for the Waynesburg cross-country team, Aubrey Wingert, finishing her sophomore campaign in style. And number 1, you just heard from him, Isaiah Alonzo, the sophomore from Chandler, Arizona for the basketball team. 23, 5 rebounds, 6 for 8 from the field goal area, and 10 for 10 from the charity stripe, a name that I'm also very excited about coming up in this 2019-2020 basketball season. Well, for my partner Dylan Cleland and for everybody back in the control room, I'm Jack Hillgrove saying happy holidays, have a happy Thanksgiving from Jacket Sports Weekly. We'll see you next time.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.